What is up, guys? Welcome back to another GeekaWhat video. In today's video, I'm going to be building one of the most unique looking gaming PCs I've ever assembled here on the channel. A system built inside of HYTE's brand new and long awaited X50 PC case. I'm going to be walking you through this case, what makes it special and what it's like to build in, talking you through the hardware I'll be putting inside to hopefully create a system that provides really unique visuals. I'll of course be walking you guys through performance later too, to see exactly how this thing really stacks up. Let's dive into it. Now, I want to start by talking about my approach to today's build, because when I got this case in, it was clear I had to do something a little bit different. Now, the HYTE X50 comes in a couple of different models and a wide range of colours. This is the standard X50 variant, but they also have an X50 Air, which ditches this rather nice, curved, and quite stiff, there we go, tempered glass side panel in favour of mesh instead. Now, this is all the trend nowadays, these curved panels. Most of the curved panels we've seen are this way, and they kind of go on the side of the case. This one sees the curve actually extend over the top of the chassis. The whole case is designed as one big bubble, and that continues with the design cues on this power supply shield at the top. The power supply has returned to the top of the case, which is how things used to be and aren't anymore. Presumably that's been done so the glass can extend over the top without compromising on fan mounting space. You can fit 3 120mm fans on the bottom, the side, and the front, and then at the rear here we have room for an additional 120mm fan as well. In terms of colours, you've got a few options. They have a white one and a black one, and then they've got loads of other colour flavours. There's like a purple one, a red one, a green one, maybe a blue one. Is there a yellow one? There are lots of colour options. This is the purpley one, and I thought it looked really rather nice. Taking a spin around the rear of the case, and you can see we've got yet more mesh. The mesh on the front is a big deal here. This was really hard to achieve apparently with the actual curved metal and keeping this mesh pattern consistent. And then at the rear of the case, we're met with another wall of mesh, and it's good to see from an attention to detail standpoint that there's a little curve as well on the top of the rear panel. The rear of the case, you can see where our side fan mounts are, and then at the back we've got room of course for any cable management, any drives we want to mount, and then all of our front panel cables, which are white. A couple of special bits I've picked out for the case include some purple and white PSU cable extensions. I was going to order fancy ones off Cable Mod, and then I found these ones on Amazon and they were a lot cheaper, so I bought these instead. I've also got a figurine and this little shelf so we can mount a few little colour matched items in the case. HYTE kindly sent over some fans for this build that match with the chassis as well, and you can see these look really rather nice, again with that white cable and the Taro milk colourway. I'm going to have some in intake, so they don't have reverse blade ones currently. I'm guessing they probably will in the future, but even still I thought this would match the build a little better. I've also got a vertical GPU mount, as I figured showing off the card vertically today would be good. This one comes in from EZDIYFAB and again has a little bit of RGB diffusion that we can actually install, so I'm excited to see how that looks later too. Finally, on the accessories front, I've also picked up a GPU power extension cable. This is once again from EZDIYFAB. Not sponsored, I just really like their extension cables. And this one here is actually a right angle connector. The idea is that given the orientation of the graphics card, this cable should be totally hidden, because I couldn't actually find a PCI Gen 5 power cable that was white and purple. So I figured the next best thing is to have it in white and try and hide as much of it as possible. So with the accessories out the way, let's walk through the parts and start getting this thing assembled, because I'm nervous in that I want to do this case justice, but I'm also excited to see how it's going to look once it's built. And I'm going to start with the CPU cooler, because this is a part that I really agonized on this build over for a long time. The disadvantage of having the power supply at the top and having the glass at the top is we have no ability to mount a radiator at the top of the case. And the vast majority of liquid coolers that you buy are actually designed with the fans pre-mounted to be installed in an exhaust configuration. And this cooler is no different. Now you can see where the cooler would normally go, but that's not an option for us. So what should we do instead? Well, there's a couple of key choices. The first choice that we could make is to mount the liquid cooler on the side of the case. The second option is to have the radiator mounted at the front of the case, which I think might look a little bit better, because I can then use HYTE's colour matched fans, both for the front intake behind this front panel to hide any white, and then also on the side here. That will then allow me to use the fans that come included on the back of the radiator that need reversing and give us push-pull performance. That will help decrease temperatures and increase CPU performance, hopefully, me. So I think that's the right way to go about it. I picked up this particular Corsair cooler for the screen and the top design module. I wanted to carry through some of the rounded edges of the case, and this cooler has a rounded square and a circular screen, so it felt like probably the best match for the build. In terms of the CPU I'll be cooling, I have only gone for a Ryzen 5 9600X. You could upgrade in this build to a 78 or 9800X 3D and you'd have no issues with this cooler config. I want to primarily use this build for 1440p and a bit of 4K gaming, so the GPU is more important than the CPU. Let's talk about memory next. Why not? Memory, I've gone for one of the nicest looking and fastest white kits in my arsenal. This is Thermaltake's ToughRAM XG. Again, it should tie the whole colour scheme together nicely. I really like the white aesthetic and the RGB diffusion on the top. I think it looks great. And this like sort of dark grey glossy material's really nice too. Thermaltake actually have some of the best looking RAM kits out there in my opinion, so that's why I've gone for those in today's build. For the graphics card, I went for something that looks again great, performs really good. This is MSI's RTX 5070 Ti. The 5070 Ti is one of the most popular GPUs right now for good reason. If you're thinking, yeah, but James, why won't I wait for the 5070 Ti Super? Well, I made a video recently about how Nvidia might just have cancelled the Super lineup, and you can find that video in the cards now. There's some really interesting info in there that might make your buying decision a little bit easier. Of course, the alternative is AMD's 9070 XT. I was a bit 50-50 to be honest in this build on which to use. I've done a lot of 9070 XT builds recently, so I figured this would be the one I would go for. And in terms of performance, they're very, very similar. More recently, the 9070 XT has pulled ahead in certain games, but they're both very capable GPUs. Now then, for the motherboard in today's build, I've gone MSI to try and match the GPU. This is the B850 Edge TI Wi-Fi. The only thing to note with this is that I believe MSI have already announced a max version, which is a bit more white in terms of like the PCI slots and the memory slots and stuff, which might look a bit better in today's build. Also, probably a good idea for me to talk about storage at this stage. I've gone for the Samsung 9100 Pro. Now, this is the 4TB drive. Obviously, this is expensive. The 2TB is probably a slightly better fit for the build, but just depends on what capacity you want. This is a Gen 5 drive, so again, you could save a bit of money here. This build is not aimed at price to performance. It's aimed at being really, really good and looking amazing and just providing a great experience in the performance and boot speed and game load speed department. And that's why I've opted to spend a bit more money on this component. First things first, I'm going to go ahead and install the processor into the motherboard, get that lined up, drop it in place, and then return the socket cover like so. Memory is next up. I'll be using the 2nd and 4th RAM DIMMs in today's build, which is nice and simple. And you can see how that looks really rather good and is hopefully going to fit the color scheme of everything I need today really rather nicely. Then it's just a case of pushing and lifting the M.2 heatsink at the top of the board, sliding the 9100 Pro in, pushing that down over MSI's pretty cool toolless mechanism. I actually really like that design. And then adding the heatsink back on. Nice and simple. Next up, time to move this into the case. It's an ATX case. This is an ATX motherboard. All the standoffs are in the right place. So we've got nothing to worry about or whatsoever. Right, I'm going to just get that lined up, get the I.O. poking through the little cutout at the rear, and then handily, HYTE have got some raised standoffs, one in the middle, which is actually hidden behind this cover, which I can take off. And the little bag of screws that comes included is nicely labelled. So thanks, HYTE. I appreciate it. Next up, I'm just going to add these AMD brackets to the CPU water block. So yeah, I think want the tubes off to the side. So let's do that. Our CPU block is going to go kind of here with the radiator at the front. Now seems like a good time to do the radiator and to start working through the fans. Now currently I've got 8 of these HYTE Taro milk fans and I'm waiting on a further 4 to arrive because they come in packs of 4. And I need in total 1 for the back, 3 for the bottom, 3 for the side and 3 for the front, which by my calculations means 10 fans. I'm going to keep the Corsair fans, but I'm going to mount these on the back of the radiator in that pull configuration, which will also hopefully provide some lighting in the case without breaking the colour scheme. That's the plan. This build is complicated, so I think it's time for one thing, and one thing only, a fan-based montage, otherwise known as a fantage.
We gon' make you move from side to side. We gon' make you lose all inside your mind. Oh, we gon' get you through this just for one more. So baby, let's up it tonight. Let me give.
So the fans are in, and while I was screwing those into the chassis, I had a delivery of this. Now, I talked earlier about how the motherboard was mostly the right colour scheme and design for what I wanted, but mostly is the key word, because there are a few accents of black on here and maybe a bit more silver that I think would actually suit the build. Now, this is MSI's X870E Gaming Plus Max Wi-Fi, so it's one of their brand new boards, and I opened it up, and you know when you just get that feeling that you might have found something that's a bit of a better fit. The connectors for the power and the actual RAM DIMMs and PCI slots themselves are all white now. There's still a fair bit of silver, but I actually think this will be a better match aesthetically for the build. So I'm sorry for being so pedantic, but you're gonna need to give me another minute to swap the board out, because it's gotta be perfect after all.
We gon' make you move from side to side. We gon' make you loose, oh, inside your mind. Oh, we gon' get you through this, just for one more. So baby, let's up it tonight.
You know what? I think that was worth it, and I do think that looks better. Now, the next step is probably the power supply. And for today's build, I've gone for an 850 watt unit. That's what I'd recommend really for the 5070 Ti. And this model specifically is from NZXT. It's their C850 Gold. It's 850 watts, as the name suggests. It's 80 plus gold, you get a 10-year warranty, and it's ATX 3.1 as well, which is great. The power supply is white. That's important because we can actually see some of the power supply through this fan cutout at the bottom of the PSU shroud. That's the only thing I'm not 100% sure about in this case. It is the PSU shroud, but it will act as an exhaust, and that I guess is going to be really beneficial. Now, if I slide the power supply into the rear, I'm going to put the cables on in a second, don't worry, just to see how it looks. And yeah, you can see there, the power supply is going to be visible through the bottom of the case. We've got a little bit of a silver bar on the NZXT design, but I think that looks okay. In terms of the power cables I need, I am using extensions in today's build, but they are just that. They are extensions, not power supply cable replacements. Now, you might be thinking, James, do you really need extensions? These power cables from NZXT are white and on brand. Well, let me grab, just as an example, my motherboard power cable extension and check these out. Oh, yes. Look how good that looks. That's amazing. And I think it's going to tie the build in nicely. I tried to get like a lighter shade of purple. These are quite dark. Again, once it's in the build, though, I think we should be good. The only thing I might do is I might run the CPU power extensions up into this corner now before I actually put the power supply in, as the power supply may start to impede on our grommet space and make running cables through this hole a bit harder than it otherwise would be. So yeah, I'm going to get it all wired up, get all the power supply cables sorted, run the CPU power cables, screw the power supply in, and then get all of those cables connected so our system has some juice. Fantastic. So we've got the CPU power cables plumbed up, the motherboard connections are plumbed up. I'm going to go ahead and attack the front panel cables, which there are only, well, there's 4. Let's do HD audio first. That's going to go down here in the bottom left of the motherboard. That's followed closely by a USB 3 connector towards the right, the JFP1 front panel on the very bottom right, and the USB Type-C just under the motherboard power cable. Now, with all of that done, it's time to resurrect the vertical GPU support bracket, or at least the PCI riser, the RGB strip. So what we've got here is we've got our backplane piece. So what this is going to do is actually go in the place of where the existing PCI slot covers are, a little something like that. Give me a few moments, I'm going to get that all assembled, take the existing PCI lines out, and then pop the completed assembly in and slot the PCI riser into the motherboard. Okay, so the GPU riser cable is in. The riser is slightly too long for what I actually need, but I'm hoping that that will just be hidden behind the graphics card in a minute and that it won't get in the GPU's way. The only actual way to find out is to go ahead and install said graphics card. Let's line the GPU up. Aha, we are making progress. Probably worth putting the GPU power cable into the graphics card now before everything gets a little bit too tight. So let's take that over the top, and it's kind of in, but obviously at the moment not actually in. So the challenge is just trying to get the thumb screws in at the back of the GPU, and I'll try and get you an angle of this. I maybe should have put the graphics card into the riser before I put the riser into the case. Okay, so there was a little bit of adjustment needed. This is still kicking itself out a little bit. It's kind of coming this way at the back end, so that will need some tweaking, but it's getting there. There's 3 fans left to go, and then this thing's gonna be ready to boot. And boy, am I excited. It's just looking special already, and I've still got a few finishing touches left to go.
Let me get funky.
Looking really good. There's no doubt that this is one of the most unique gaming PCs I've ever put together. I'm a little undecided on the power supply shield at the top of the case, but I actually think the wraparound glass that curves up from the side to the top of the chassis looks fantastic. And there's no denying that bubbly front mesh with the really unique colorway of this purple case does look pretty fantastic. I'm glad I went with the white theme in this build, and to keep with that white theme, I also picked up MSI's 321 URXW QD OLED. Now this is a 240Hz 4K monitor that allowed me to benchmark this system in a wide variety of titles. It's a QD OLED panel as well, which means the colors, the blacks look absolutely fantastic, and it's a panel that really gives you the best of both worlds with a stunning all-white design. You guys are always asking for monitor recommendations, so I'll leave that alongside everything else linked in the description below. Now in terms of performance, how does this build actually stack up? Is the Ryzen 9600X a bottleneck for the RTX 5070 Ti? Let's find out. Starting off strong with the brand new Arc Raiders, a game that's known for being fairly CPU intensive, and here at the 4K high settings preset, Arc Raiders achieved just shy of 109 FPS, with 108.7 on average to be precise. This is at rasterization, of course, with the likes of DLSS or AMD's FSR equivalent. Your frame rate mileage is going to get better, but in terms of that raw rasterization performance, this is where we land. This positive performance is mirrored in Battlefield 6.2, a game that I think looks particularly exceptional. One of the best looking FPS games I've played in, well, ever it feels like. Here at 1440p high settings preset, the frame rate was pretty fantastic. 119 frames per second on average provides a very, very playable gaming experience, and one that feels really very smooth. Tuned down to Cyberpunk 2077, which is a bit of an older game now, but still a good one to test out. Here at 1440p high in the inbuilt benchmarking mode, the system achieved just shy of 150 FPS. While jumping through into F1 2025, one of my personal favourite games, this time at 4K on the ultra high preset, the build achieved closer to 200 frames per second on average, with 194. This was in the in-game benchmarking mode, and I think the game looked pretty fantastic. I also tested out Marvel's Rivals at 4K high. Marvel's Rivals a really intense game, and this did yield the lowest frame rate of all at just 86 FPS. Finally, I also tested out Fortnite at 1080p competitive settings. Here the build achieved a really fantastic 295 FPS on average. That's with everything tuned down to low except the render distance, which was set to far. And here we are really taking advantage and some of that refresh rate on the MSI 321 monitor that I've used for this system. That's one of the reasons I picked this monitor. It gives you options at low resolutions where you want the higher refresh rate, but gives you that higher res and lovely visual fidelity in games where running at that top resolution can really pay dividends. What do you guys think of this build? I think it turned out really well. I'm super pleased with the end result, after being a little bit nervous that I wouldn't quite do the case in this system justice. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.